It's the way of kings, it's the way of flipping kings, the way of flipping kings and other flipping things. Hello, welcome back to the Way of Kings read through what I am doing with you. Whoops, 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 hooray! Yum. Hello, welcome back to this thing that we're doing. We are now on part 1, Above Silence. And what are those weird words written underneath Above Silence? What are they? Are they magical words? Are they elven words for things? Do they mean fight and honor? Or are they people's names? Just a reminder, this video series is for people who either have read this book or are reading it along with me. I'm not here to spoil this book for you. This series is not about giving you spoilers. It is about reacting to chapters after we've read them. So, if you're reading along, please read the chapter first, then watch the video. If you've read the book already, then it doesn't matter, does it? You can just watch it whenever. Now, I can't remember if I mentioned this during the prologue video, but at the beginning of that chapter and this one, we have these odd little quotes. Here's the one on the prologue. Here's the one on the new chapter. That's what they look like. And they are people saying things just seconds before death. So we don't yet know what these quotes are about or who they're spoken by, but they appear to be from different people, each one just seconds before death. The first one was 31 seconds before death. The next one was 10 seconds before death, both in the year 1171. And although we don't know any of the context, it's not clear what either of these people are talking about. They're saying it just before they die, and this second one is considered questionable. We don't know by what criteria yet. So here we are, 5 years later. It was going to happen, we knew it was going to happen, and here it is, the medieval warfare bit. Now at this point we have to make a decision. Is this book going to be all about medieval warfare in a fantasy setting? And if it is, do we want that? Now I know the answer to the question, but I don't want to spoil anything for you. What I will tell you is that if you enjoyed the prologue and the prelude, whether or not you enjoyed this first chapter doesn't really matter. If you didn't like it, then don't worry. If you did like it, well then great. The book is not going to abandon either one of you. And there's a big clue to this in the chapter itself. See, yes, this is a chapter all about medieval warfare stuff, and we're talking about proper, like, not even with magic, they've just got spears and shields. But there's a detail that you may have noticed which made it very readable if you're not into that sort of thing, and I'm not. Ow! Ooh! Ah! Ooh! Ah! Okay, now we can't really talk very much about fantasy novels without at some point referencing what is going on with nerds. In order to do this, we have to admit that we fall under that category because here we are reading a fantasy book and enjoying it. If enjoying it we are, and I am. Therefore, we must acknowledge all of our brethren in the fantasy book reading world, and I think I can say without fear of controversy that there are a lot of nerds out there who really like warfare stuff. I'm not really quite sure exactly what it is, but they really like to read about battle tactics. So going into a book like this that shows knights with big swords and armour and things standing on cliff edges going, whoa, I'm going to do some swords and armour stuff in a minute. Whoa, you just wait there. I'm going to get you with my sword in a minute. Oh no, I hope you don't. No, I'm gonna. Oh no, don't. I'm going to get you with my sword. Look at the size of it. I'm looking at the size of it. It's enormous. I've got one as well though. I know, but I don't care. I'm going to get you with my sword. Oh, well, you'd better get it over with then, you dirty bastard. So looking at the cover, I'm going, is this going to be one of those warfare books? I don't think that's the sort of thing that interests me, he says, with all these space marine warfare books right here. But they're in space. They've got plasma cannons. It's different. Totally, completely different. It's exactly the same. It's completely different. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with war stories. I mean, go and listen to the Hardcore History podcast if you're interested in war stories, by the way. The whole World War I series that he's got there is just absolutely just fantastic. It's fascinating. But you know what I mean. I didn't want to read a book of this length that's just sort of siege weapons porn. And so I'm happy to say that when I read this first chapter for the first time, I was very pleasantly surprised because I recognised something that Brandon was doing here, which is that yes, he's put us in this medieval warfare sort of scenario, but he's given us like at least 3 characters that by the end of just a handful of pages, what, 5 pages? How long is it? Oh gosh, it's 14.5 pages. I thought it was shorter than that. Well anyway, in the space of just a few short pages, Brandon gets us caring about these characters, or at least sort of interested in, they're the main thing, not the war. And that's the trick, isn't it? That's writing, isn't it? It doesn't matter what's going on, as long as you're interested in the people it's going on around. And the people in this case begin with Sen, who's 15, and he's ended up here in this war. Now in a book this big, there's a lot of scope for you to sort of forget the important details in the early chapters, so that when they come up later and you're supposed supposed to go, oh yeah, like that thing in the early chapter. It's very easy to have forgotten those details by then. Well, I'm in the pleasant position of going back over it with you, having read, as I confessed before, really quite a lot of the rest of the book already. If that makes you uncomfortable, if you wanted me to be reading the chapters at the same time as you, then do stay tuned, because there's going to be a pleasant surprise for you later on. But anyway, given this foresight, I am in a position to highlight some of the points dropped in these early chapters that come back later on and tell you to really remember them. And if this ever constitutes spoilers, then hopefully I can do it in a subtle way that doesn't give it away too much. But in the case of this chapter, I can be pretty open and honest about it, because the important point here is that Sen is a child. He's 15, that's really not old enough to go to war and to be killed. And the key point is how he found himself to be in this particular squad. Sen is our main POV character in this chapter, but he doesn't know what's going on. He doesn't know what the battle is about, he doesn't know who anyone is, or what to do, or how to fight. And so we get a second kind of father figure-esque character called Dalit. Dalit is a mountainous, bearded man. And it's clear that he's important in this squad, but we don't know exactly in what way. There's just a lot of trust put on him. He's kind of in some way some sort of a leader, but he doesn't seem to actually have the rank of leader. No, the rank of leader is held by a chap called Kaladin. Where do we recognise that name from, we think to ourselves, and of course the answer is, it's one of those mystery words here, isn't it? And Dalit reassures us that being in Kaladin's squad means that you are essentially safe. And here he is, Kaladin Stormblessed. Or Stormblessed, I suppose, you never really know when it's written down, do you? He shows up and he's just a kid as well, he's only 19 or thereabouts, what's going on? Who is this guy? But everyone totally loves him. Everyone in this squad has this real respect, and the way that he talks to his squad members, particularly Dalit, it's really a conversation between equals. These aren't people, he's not ordering anyone about, they just seem to be sort of friends. But Kaladin is the leader. And we find out that this boy Sen used to belong to a chap called Gare. I say belong to, you know, he was a soldier under Gare or whatever. And Kaladin paid money, good money, to get this kid out of Gare's squad, because he thinks Gare is an idiot, and put him into Kaladin's squad. So Kaladin has paid for this kid to be in his squad, even though he's really young and inexperienced, he doesn't know what he's doing. That's a bit weird, isn't it? Why would he do that? And that's the point. That's the detail you should try and remember. Brandon pointed out to us himself, he has Dalit explain to the kid that honestly, quite a lot of the people in this squad started out that way. And he says that he reckons, his theory is, that Sen and anyone else fitting Sen's description as a young, rookie, probably gonna die kid who's been forced into battle, Dalit reckons that they remind Kaladin of someone. And there's a real kind of ... look out into the distance kind of remember that point, boys and girls, kind of a moment. When Kaladin sees a kid who's too young to be here at war, he bribes whoever's in charge of that kid to send them to his squad instead because of some memory, because it reminds him of someone. And maybe this is part of why his squad seems to love him so much, because he saved them all, you know, from really horrible circumstances and trained them up, and now here they are. And he really did train them up. This is a well-trained squad. Everyone else in the army is just sort of running around like headless chickens. This guy, though, he's got his men working in special formations, he's banging out special little patterns on his shield, and the guys all recognise it and they form into certain formations and patterns and things. So tactically, these guys seem to be above anyone else. And then there's Kaladin himself. Kaladin is a whirlwind of action. He's got a special spear, which has got knives attached to it, and so there he is, whirling about, doing spear stuff, but also he's grabbing knives off his spear and he's flicking them at people. And he's either really good or really lucky, hence the name Stormblessed. If you're in his squad, you're really probably not gonna die. And that's a big thing, because most people are gonna die. Soldiers are, in this situation, sort of expendable, as evidenced by the fact that there's no clear indication of what's actually being fought for. Something to do with a boundary skirmish. The only explanation we have is a landlord was encroaching on Bright Lord Amaram's territory. Amaram. If anyone's seen an actual video of Brandon Sanderson saying any of these names out loud and wants to point me towards those videos so that I pronounce things correctly, then do please feel free. So you got this chap called Bright Lord Amaram, and he's got some territory, and someone else, a landlord, whatever that means in this context, he's encroaching on it. So you got Bright Lord Amaram over here with, this is my land, and you got someone over here going, well, I'm going to have it, here are my army guys, blah 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 blah. And then it says ultimately the land is owned by High Prince Sadeas. Sadeas! We've heard that name before, haven't we? Sadeas? Where have we heard that name before? Sadeas. So there's King Gavilar dying on the floor, and he goes through a list of his enemies that could have sent an assassin. Ristaris? What? Who? No? Huh? Sadeas? No idea, sorry. And then he goes, I never thought, which suggests that he thinks Sadeas isn't going to kill him, but for some reason his name is there. And here we are again with another mention of Sadeas. So here's this guy. All we know is that he owns a load of land, and that land is currently Bright Lord Amaram's territory, and over the course of this chapter we get the sense that Bright Lord Amaram is who they're all fighting for. So you got Sadeas up there, he's the big head honcho owning all of the land, and he's pretty a quite head honcho because he, the king knows or knew before he's killed exactly who he is. So he's up there, and then under him, goodness knows how far under him, you got this chap called Bright Lord, which makes him sound really posh. So he's probably not too far under him, Bright Lord Amaram, and he's sat there in Sadeas' land with his armies, going, this is my territory and I'll defend it against whoever that is over there, this landlord that's encroaching on it. So they've got to have a little fight. But then we hear that Sen's heard that the other guy is another prince. So probably what we're looking at is High Prince Sadeas there, and then his army guy, Bright Lord Amaram, and then his army, and they're going blah 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 blah. And then over here we've got, I don't know, High Prince someone else, because Sadeas is a High Prince, we've got High Prince someone else, and then he's probably got an Amaram, and he's probably got soldiers, and they're going blah 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 blah. So you got these two Alethi princedoms, which sounds, well, I mean it sounds like, but I can also confirm that it actually is, that makes them essentially the same thing. They're not separate countries or anything like that, they're both Alethi, which means they're both from Alethkar. What it boils down to is we've got two separate princes of the same nation, just having a little battle over who owns what little bit of land, and into this meaningless squabble, they're throwing soldiers, and they're just all dying left, right and centre. But not in Kaladin's squad. Everyone's dying all around them, and Kaladin's squad is pretty safe, because Kaladin's amazing! And we find out he's great at tactics. His squad knows way more about, sort of, tactically how to survive than anyone else. Most people look up into the sky and see a volley of arrows heading towards them, and they go, oh no, a volley of arrows, I'm gonna die! But Kaladin's squad are looking at it from the enemy's point of view, and they're going, well, they'll want each arrow to have, like, the highest possibility of hitting guys as possible, so they'll be firing on the densest part of the army, which is not us, it's those guys back there. So we're alright, let's just duck, and we can concentrate on running over here. Fighty fight, 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 fighty fight, fighty fighty fight, 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 fighty 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 fight. But Sen does get hit by something, and he's bleeding really badly, and Kaladin shows up, and he's like, right then, I'm going to help with this, and he binds the leg. And Sen is like, whoa, that was weird, he was able to bind my leg. So we get the sense that that's not what most squad leaders will be able to do, and Dalek goes, yeah, he knows how to do that. Good, isn't it? And he can read glyphs. I know, it's good, isn't it? And not only does he pay out of his own pocket to get kids like Sen transferred to his squad, he also bribes the battlefield medic teams who run in with stretchers and, get the wounded people back off to safety. He bribes them so that instead of just saving, like, posh people, they'll save his squad men as well. And this takes up most of his pay. So this is a guy who will use everything he's got to keep his men safe, and that includes, like, at the expense of his own comfort. This isn't some high and mighty officer type, this is a guy who really, really cares for everyone in his squad. And it shows the way they talk to each other. And now a Bright Lord Battalion Lord shows up. I know, but he says those two words in separate paragraphs, so it's okay. Which is a guy in great big armour. And Sen goes, oh, is that a shard bearer? And Kaladin goes, no. Thank goodness it's not a shard bearer, because if a shard bearer showed up here, which isn't gonna happen, then everything would be terrible. It would be really bad if a shard bearer showed up. Ooh, on my life. So anyway, I'm just gonna go over there and fight that guy in the big armor who's not a shard bearer, because if a shard bearer was here, that'd be terrible. Okay, bye! And Sen's left behind with Dalek going, well, it's a good job there isn't a shard bearer here. It would be really bad if a shard bearer showed up here. Man alive! But that's not gonna happen, and isn't that a good job? Oh, wait a minute! And immediately a gigantic guy in just ridiculous armor shows up with just a big sword that's like all wavy and intricate, and it's huge, like the size of a whole guy. Size of a whole guy. But not the shard bearer. He's the size of more than a guy. He's a really big guy, all covered in shard armor, shard plates, that's the word for it. And it's just amazing, and it's intricate, and everything interlocks perfectly in a way that they haven't invented yet, and like, there's just like the little wings and stuff on his helmet. It's just amazing. And Sen's just sort of drifting out of consciousness going, flippin' heck, that guy is massive. And that's pretty much that. Now this chapter wasn't as immediately exciting to me as the previous two were, but I am glad to see that the introduction of the inevitable medieval warfare didn't just bore me, because here were these three characters. You got Sen, you got Dalet, you got Kaladin, and all three of them are interesting in some way, and one of them is maybe a bit magic. He really can fight very, 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 very well. And then a huge shard bearer shows up to prove that not all of the magic sword, magic armor guys are just extinct by this point in the story or something. Nope, magic armor and swords is going to be an ongoing thing, so... And then there's another really clever invention, in my opinion, which is the spren. These things are kind of, I mean, you're tempted at first to think of them as fairies. I think I said this in the previous video. But that's not quite what they are. But what they are is a constant reminder, no matter how far into, like, quite serious, quite straight-faced medieval warfare stuff this gets with your chainmail and your spears and all of this kind of thing, no matter how serious it gets, there's always the spren to just keep reminding you that no, we're in a magic world here. Or at least a world where something is different, something is up. In this chapter we're introduced to pain spren, which are described as like little orange hands crawling around when you're hurt, and when your pain starts to fade, as Sens does as he starts to lose consciousness, then they scuttle off to find someone else. But you kind of get the sense that they're bubbling into existence because there's pain being felt, rather than, you know, they're not just little spiders that crawl out of the floor and go towards, that are attracted to pain. Although, it's really not made clear. And by the way, they're described as little orange hands with the fingers are way too long, but it could be that we're in a world where they don't have spiders, so they don't have the vocabulary to say they're like little orange spiders. So I don't quite know whether they're more like hands or more like spiders, but either way, that's the sort of thing they are. And there we register them as magic, don't we? So what details do we glean from this chapter? Well, we know that there's some kind of war going on, and not the war that's going on between these two silly high princes. That's just a little skirmish, it's just a border dispute. No, we hear that the king would probably stop that from going on, but he's off fighting a war against the Parshendi in a place called the Shattered Plains, which is where you get sent if you're a particularly good soldier on this scale. So essentially that's where all the real fighting's going on. Really good soldiers are off on these Shattered Plains with the king fighting the Parshendi. And we know the Parshendi, they're the people with the red and black mottled skin that were attending King Gavilar's feast. I think they were providing the music, I think they were the band, but secretly they were plotting to have him assassinated. Well, they had him assassinated. So they're going like... And now, 5 years later, there's still a revenge war going on. So all of the Alethi people are like, "Rah, you killed King Gavilar! Ooh, we don't like that! Ooh." They're running off to the Shattered Plains, which is apparently where the Parshendi are, and they're fighting them to get revenge. And Kaladin's ambition is to get his squad fighting so well that they get to go off to the Shattered Plains. That's he wants to fight on the Shattered Plains with the king. In this chapter we get the sense that the divide between light-eyed and dark-eyed people literally is about the colour of their eyes. We're told that they're chosen by the heralds at birth, and the heralds, we've learned, are kind of like angel figures. So it's like saying you've been, you know, chosen by the fates, essentially. So people with light eyes get to be, you know, like blue or green, they get to be leaders, and then people with like brown eyes, dark eyes, they're lower class citizens. It really does seem to be, you know, just about what eyes you're born with, and that's clever, isn't it? That's Brandon's come up with a good little system there, because eye colour is genetic, so you can imagine that in a world where eye colour is what we're sort of, you know, divided by, people would see it as essentially, you know, a family line has been blessed.
But there will be more about that in the next chapter.
Now, Kaladin is a dark eyes, he's got brown eyes, and in this chapter we see him glaring with real hatred. That's the noise of hatred. Glaring with real hatred at a light eyes somewhere, and you get the sense that he just hates light eyes. Just we've heard about chulls, we don't know much about them except that Sen's father hates chull rustlers, so they're a kind of cattle or something. Kremlings, we don't know what they are yet, but if you take a spear and stab a guy who's on the ground, it's like skewering a Kremling. Kremlings also are the crocodile bad guys in Donkey Kong Country, aren't they? But this is Kremling with a C, not with a K. Rockbud. We don't really know much about this yet, but when Sen is trying to run along and he's having a hard time because the ground's a bit rubbish, he nearly trips on a hidden rockbud, vines withdrawn into its shell. So a rockbud is something on the ground that you can nearly trip over, and it's got vines, and it's got a shell, and the vines can be withdrawn into the shell. So what is it? Is it an animal? Is it a bud? Is it a rock? We don't know yet. Kaladin himself is a character we need to know about because his name was right there on the Part 1 page, indicating that he is going to be one of the two main characters that this section follows. So here's what we know about him so far. He's about 19, he's tall, he's got black Alethi hair, shoulder length and wavy, and dark brown eyes. He wears the common leathers of a spearman, but under them is a pair of dark trousers. That wasn't supposed to be allowed, goes the quote. So we know that he is above other people in some way. He gets to do things his own way. On the shoulder shoulder of his jerkin, he has knots of white cord on the shoulder of his jerkin, marking him out as a squad leader. He is a beloved leader and really skillful in battle. You simply won't die if you're around him in a battle. Even when someone's injured, he can treat their wounds. He seems to have a particularly trusting relationship with Dalet, the mountainous beardy guy, and he routinely rescues young soldiers, boys who aren't trained enough to actually go to war but who are about to be sent anyway, and he keeps them safe in his own squad and sees them trained up there. And Dalet thinks that they remind him of someone. Enigmatic ellipses. Alright, that was chapter 1, Stormblessed or Stormblessed. Now, so far the videos are quite lengthy. That's not always going to be the case. As we settle into the world of this book, then each chapter is going to be introducing less and less new information about that world, so there's going to be less to talk about. So expect the videos to get shorter as we go on. I hope they will anyway, because they take a lot of editing. But I imagine that the next handful of chapters are going to be quite lengthy videos, because we're going to be really finding our feet in this new world. So, everybody reading along, you should now feel free to read Chapter 2, Honor is Dead, which starts with the words 8 months later. So, the little battle that we just experienced was set up for something that's going to happen 8 months later. What are the clues we've got as to what it might be? Well, Kaladin was this amazing fighter, but even he knows that when a Shardbearer shows up, it's bad news. We know that normal people can't fight Shardbearers, and that every single time a lowly, dark-eyed soldier has been able to fight and defeat a Shardbearer, it's almost never happened, and every single time it's ever happened has become the stuff of legend. So, maybe we're going to see Kaladin fight a Shardbearer, and it's going to be completely amazing, because Kaladin's completely amazing. So we left Kaladin running off to fight the normal battalion lord, and then in comes this Shardbearer. Sen, who's our point of view character, drifts unconscious, so we don't have any more, we have essentially drifted unconscious and we don't know what's happening. And whatever it is, we're about to pick up on whatever it was 8 months after it happened. Wonder what that's going to be. Well, off you go and find out, and I shall see you next time. Goodbye!